So Todd Howard just did a 1 hour 20-minute interview with IGN's Ryan McCaffrey as a part of their IGN Unfiltered series that everyone should definitely check out if you're interested in Todd's career or really got a really interest in the development of the Bethesda Game Studios games that have came out to this point. And a part of this series is really an in-depth look into Todd's career with also questions about the future of Bethesda Game Studios and the future of what he wants to do in his career and so on and so forth. And by all means, you should definitely check it out and also check out the rest of the series as well. I tend to not miss many episodes of this. It's absolutely fantastic and some great ones along the way. But by all means, we're just talking about the Todd Howard episode. I just wanted to kind of break it down towards the stuff that's relevant to the time being now and also for the games that are coming out in the future. If you want to find out more information about how Todd got to where he was in his career, like with his work on the Terminator games, what inspired him and so on and so forth, by all means check out the full interview. But in regards to Fallout 76 in particular, Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, I've got some smatterings of information. A lot of the headlines have really come around about Fallout 76 when he talks about how he knew that game was going to have bumps in its reception when the game came out. And while I think a lot of people theorise this due to mainly people not being happy with the game at launch, and to be fair, you'd have to be quite stupid if you were making that game and not think it was going to be a resounding success critically. But he did say that what the aim of that game was to get better over time and we get to a point where in the future it's a game as a service where the community really like it and give frequent content updates where it eventually gets to that higher level. And he refers to a few games in this that refer to Elder Scrolls Online have been in a situation with this, which is absolutely what I'd agree with. That game at launch was nowhere near as good of a position as it is now. But so many other games are like that as well. You know, Final Fantasy XIV was like that, Rainbow Six Siege was like that when that came out a while ago. Even GTA Online was like that when that first came out, that update first came out, that mode of the game compared to what it's like now, completely different story. But I will say though that when it comes to Fallout 76 is that it's not really a surprise that when they released it in the state that it was in. But one thing I do agree with Todd on is that when he's talking about it, about some of the mistakes that Bethesda Game Studios has made, is not getting it in the hands of the players earlier. I remember when I first saw the dates of the beta testing that they released, and I thought it was actually a bit of a joke about how limited of amount of time they had the game in the hands of the players before the game came out. I remember, for instance, let's talk about other Bethesda games. You know, the Elder Scrolls Online made by ZeniMax Online Studios. Before that game came out, they had a very, very long closed beta. And yes, that's an MMO and it's got a lot more people in the world, for instance, but that had a closed beta that went on for a very long time. And then it seemed like they had beta weekends pretty much every weekend all the way up towards launch. And, you know, technically it was still a closed beta, but everyone and the mothers had a key, you know, and you had keys that you could give to your friends, you could invite a friend with you, so everyone could get into the game. And they had so many people in there testing the game for a long period of time before the game came out, and then also on them weekends. You could see that they got a lot of hours in, and still that didn't work out, and they still launched the game unsuccessfully and had a terrible time with servers and things at launch. And then you get Fallout 76 that had 7-8 hours here and there, about 5 or 6 different sessions. It's not enough, you know, it's not enough to really get a feel of what it's like for people who have played the game, if they're liking it and so on and so forth, and also stress testing the servers as well. You know, it's the first time Bethesda Game Studios has done an online component to their game, and you know, being able to go out and try and test that as much as possible should have been an essential aspect for them. But thankfully they've learned about that if they're ever going to do this again in the future, and I don't think they'll jump at the chance, let's put it that way. But they did say that eventually it's going to get better, and Todd said he's proud of what the work the Austin team has done, because it definitely seems that the Austin studio at Bethesda Game Studios are solely working on Fallout 76. When he talks about the other games that they're developing at the minute, they say that that's mainly Dallas, Montreal and the Rockville studio that are working on those, and Austin is solely on Fallout 76, which I think a lot of us presumed was the case, but that is what they're saying it's going to be like. But he also gives some more information about the Fallout series when he's talking about when the conversations really kind of goes chronologically through the games that he's worked on, you know, from like Morrowind to Oblivion to Fallout 3, and then they talk about Fallout New Vegas, and he says how he liked the game, and how he said as well that Obsidian was really the only company they would let make a Fallout game, a single player Fallout game that wasn't them. And they said they had a lot of conversations with them about it beforehand, and there were some conversations about them making a Fallout game afterwards. And they said there was a period in time when it could have happened, but it says it's really unlikely now that Microsoft have bought Obsidian. They say never say never, but it's really unlikely. And you can kind of see how that's the case, because one, Bethesda Game Studios, Todd stresses this a lot, that they like to keep things internal within Bethesda. They want it to be a Bethesda-based thing. So, you know, if Bethesda were to, so let's say before Microsoft bought Obsidian, then by all means it would have been a possibility for them to buy that and then make a Bethesda Game Studios Fallout style game, if you know what I mean. But if they bought another studio to bring in and do it, but they said that the chance of Obsidian making one now, they've been bought by Microsoft, seems to be very slim. So it's a shame on that side, but they said they like to keep that stuff internal, which you can definitely imagine and definitely see why. We'll go on to the Starfield stuff then, and by all means, Todd doesn't really give a lot of information around Starfield and the Elder Scrolls 6 because he's just trying to be as coy as possible and trying to be give away as little information as possible. But he keeps repeating the thing of being patient, and it says when they show the game, they like to keep the cycle between when they release it and when the game comes out to be as short as possible. He says as short as it was allowed to be able to do it was with the Fallout 4 situation when they showed the game off 5-6 months before launch of that game when they originally announced it. And Todd said that the short time he'd like to do it is about a week or 2 weeks because he'd like to have the trailer out of the initial announcement, have that moment of the of people being really excited about it, and then be really quick for the game to come out straight after that. Whereas, obviously that would be absolutely insane if that was the case. A week or 2 weeks, before, let's say, Elder Scrolls 6 gets shown again, and then it comes out 1 or 2 weeks after that. That'd be absolutely crazy. But I think the way it works now, for me, I think I'd like it best. The way they do it, show the game off about 5 or 6 months beforehand, because that gives us time as well to gradually learn a bit more about the game, see a few trailers, then give it a few, talks about how the game is, a few interviews here and there. It kind of gives us that marketing cycle where we can kind of talk about things and really explore the game before it comes out. So then when it comes out, we can know what to expect a little bit more rather than it being just a blind surprise. I do like that period of being able to learn about the games a little bit. But he says he's looking to do that next thing for Starfield. So when we see Starfield again, it's going to be quite close to when the game comes out. So they've already confirmed they're not at E3 this year. If I had to guess, they're not going to be at E3 next year, because he said to be very patient, and especially when Ryan McCaffrey asked him about that, he said, are we going to see it at the next E3? Todd didn't say yes or no, obviously, but the way I got his answer, reading between the lines, it seemed he was leaning towards no. So it looks like maybe 2021 is going to be when Starfield comes out, which by all means would make sense. There's been a few hirings going up recently about voice casts, and a few members of the voice acting community that Bethesda tend to use have put pictures up of them going to work in the Rockville studio. And judging by the making of the creation of Bethesda Game Studios games, the no-clip documentary, it definitely seems that the voice casting cycle takes around about 2-3 years before launching the game. So if they're working on that now, 2.5 years to the end of 2021, that seems quite likely to me of when the game's going to be coming out. Todd said he's not sure whether it's going to be current gen or next gen. Probably going to be next gen, with ports that go back to the current gen as well. So all of that makes sense to me of it being 2021, with the consoles expected to come out at the end of next year. But some interesting things that he said was about a lot of new tech on it. We've heard about that kind of stuff before. We've seen glimpses of that, actually, of the Elder Scrolls 6 celebration that Todd Howard and Emilio turned up on, and Matt Fyro and some other guy from ZeniMax came up on and talked about the Elder Scrolls series on that. And they showed a little bit of the tech for that. And another interesting thing that they said was that he said they haven't planned for more Starfield games after this one. He says they're making this one, they're really building the world around it. And he actually said this to clarify a point that Ryan McCaffrey said. Ryan McCaffrey says that he brought up a former quote when Todd said he's thinking about the franchise, and Todd took that back and said, I shouldn't have said thinking about the franchise, I said thinking about the world. We need it to be a big world that you're thrown into. We need a lot of story. We need to know what this world is. How do people communicate to each other? What are the races? What is their cultures like? And so on and so forth. So they're building all of that around this game so that when they go in and make it, it's going to be a lot easier for them to make it because they know exactly what they're going to be doing, which is as you'd expect. But it did say they haven't planned for any more Starfield games after this one, so it could be, a one-game job. It could be just waiting to see how successful it's going to be. So they put Starfield out. If it's really successful, then maybe they get the license to make another one after the Elder Scrolls 6, maybe. We'll have to wait and see on that. But they said at this moment in time, they're only planning for making one Starfield game, obviously subject to change. And it says that the staff on that's working on that at the minute is Rockville, Montreal, and Dallas. And they said, yeah, that's going to be that's really all the information we got on Starfield, and really the Elder Scrolls 6, there's not a lot more. He just talks about finding the tone, and this is the reason why it's been a big wait between the Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls 6 is mainly due to tech and having other projects, which we've heard that information before. He did give a little bit of information to say that the publishers themselves aren't too happy about the big gap between Skyrim and Elder Scrolls 6, considering how big of a gap it's going to be compared to other publishers. When they throw games out, they get a major success like Far Cry 3, major success at Ubisoft. 4 comes out a year or two later, then they seem to have one every year now when it comes down to Far Cry games or Assassin's Creed games, for instance. But he says that he likes his company to keep it as they've done it in the past, and if that takes a longer amount of time to make the games, by all means take the longer amount of time to make it, because he doesn't want to mess with the culture of how they make it. They've got a good thing, they know what they need to do well on, and they know what they do well, and he doesn't want to mess with things and get so many hundreds of more people into the company that they haven't worked with before to be able to make the games quicker, which I think as a Bethesda fan we all understand. Granted, we want them games quicker, but there's that culture around Bethesda game studios that we've seen from afar that is responsible for making these games what they are, these single player games what they are, and we don't want them. For me, for instance, when I'm talking about it, I don't want that to be messed with. I'm more than happy taking them as long as a time it takes for the game to be really, really good. And the way he's talking about Elder Scrolls 6, about how they're preparing, to have the game as big as a kind of scope of a game, to be able to keep content keep being made into it by the modding community, to be able to support it on the fan side of things, but also have enough content into it to make it infinitely replayable, and as replayable as what Oblivion, Skyrim and Morrowind are, so that you can keep going back to them for years on end and still keep getting great experiences and different experience every time you're replaying them, which is music to my ears, let me tell you. That's exactly what we want to hear. We'll have to wait and see if that pans out, obviously, in a few years' time. Probably going to be another 5 years at this point till we see the Elder Scrolls 6. If I had to guess, I'd say 2024, if I had to guess right now. But again, I'm just basing off when I think Starfield's going to come out, and if they're using the same technology on Starfield as Elder Scrolls 6. Again, reading between the lines of what Todd said, I'm not saying that's strictly true, but it's going to have a different character-based system that they're using on Starfield. They've said that. Maybe then the gap will be quicker to kind of in between the games, but we'll have to wait and see again to see whether that's true. But let me know what you think of this interview. If you've seen it all and you want to talk to me about some of the other points in it, let me know and I'll happily talk about some of that. I'll be obviously doing E3 stuff around Bethesda, and I'll be talking around a lot of that stuff over this weekend and early next week. So I'll have to wait and see what's going on there in regards to Fallout 76. I think that's the only Bethesda Game Studio stuff we're going to see, and maybe some updates for Blades announcing release dates of the PvP mode or something along them lines. But by all means, hopefully you've checked out the interview and let me know what you thought of it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys this weekend. Goodbye.